Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel Quote with Context. The death of one man is a tragedy, the death of millions is a statistic. Yes, the quote, "The death of one man is a tragedy, the death of millions is a statistic," is often attributed to Joseph Stalin, though there is no definitive proof he actually said it. The line became widely known through Kurt Tucholsky, a German satirist who wrote in 1925, "A diplomat from the Quai d'Orsay says, 'The war? I can't find it so terrible. The death of one man, that is a catastrophe. 100,000 deaths, that is a statistic.'" The sentiment reflects the idea that people are more emotionally affected by individual stories of suffering than by large-scale tragedies, which often feel abstract. This concept has been explored in psychology, e.g. the identifiable victim effect, and referenced in literature, including Bertolt Brecht's plays and Hannah Arendt's writings on totalitarianism. Moral or political implications. The quote, "The death of one man is a tragedy, the death of millions is a statistic," carries profound moral and political implications, touching on human psychology, governance, and ethics. Here's an analysis of its significance. 1. Psychological distance and desensitization. Moral implication, identifiable victim. Effect, humans are wired to empathize more deeply with individual stories than abstract numbers. Studies in psychology confirm this. A single death feels personal. Mass deaths become impersonal data. Compassion. Fatigue. Repeated exposure to large-scale suffering, e.g. wars, pandemics, can numb emotional responses, reducing urgency for action. Political implication. Propaganda and warfare. Leaders may exploit this by highlighting individual casualties for sympathy, e.g. a fallen soldier story, while obscuring the scale of collective suffering, e.g. civilian drone strike deaths. Media. Influence. News outlets often focus on human interest stories to evoke outrage, while systemic issues, e.g. famine, genocide, get reduced to brief statistics. 2. Dehumanization and bureaucracy. Moral responsibility. When deaths are framed as statistics, accountability diffuses. The quote suggests a chilling indifference embedded in systems, e.g. Stalin's purges, the Holocaust. Us versus them narratives. Large numbers can erase individuality, making it easier to justify atrocities against faceless groups, e.g. refugees, enemy combatants. Authoritarian tactics. Regimes may use statistical language, e.g. collateral damage, to sanitize violence. Hannah Arendt's Banality of Evil argues that bureaucracy enables mass harm by divorcing actions from moral consequences. Policy making. Governments may prioritize acceptable losses in crises, e.g. COVID-19 deaths, economic trade-offs, treating lives as data points. 3. Ethical frameworks in conflict. Utilitarianism versus deontology. The quote critiques utilitarian thinking, sacrificing few for many, by highlighting how it ignores the moral weight of each life. Deontologists would argue every individual death is inherently wrong, regardless of scale. Just war theory. The tension between proportionality and non-combatant immunity often collapses when mass casualties become normalized, e.g. Hiroshima, Syria. 4. Resistance and counter-narratives. Art and activism. Works like The Diary of Anne Frank or Schindler's List combat statistical dehumanization by restoring individuality to victims. Memorials. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial, with names engraved, or the Stolperstein, Stumbling Stones, force confrontation with singular lives lost. Conclusion. A warning against moral apathy. The quote isn't just descriptive. It's a critique of how power structures manipulate perception. It urges us to reject abstraction in favor of recognizing human dignity in every life. Question language that reduces suffering to numbers. Demand accountability even when harm is systemic. As philosopher Emmanuel Levinas argued, ethics begins in the face of the other. The moment we see a single human as infinitely valuable, statistics lose their power to justify indifference. Would you like examples of how this plays out in modern politics or media? The quote, "The death of one man is a tragedy. The death of millions is a statistic," has been tragically relevant in the last decade, as global crises, wars, and pandemics have repeatedly exposed humanity's tendency to normalize mass suffering while reacting strongly to individual stories. Here's how it applies to key events since 2014. 1. Wars and refugee crises, the selective outrage. Example: Syrian civil war from 2011 to present. Statistics: over 500,000 dead, 13 million displaced, UN estimates. Yet global attention waned as the war dragged on. Tragedy versus statistic. The image of Alan Kurdi, 3-year-old Syrian boy washed ashore in 2015, sparked global outrage, leading to temporary policy shifts in Europe. But as thousands more drowned in the Mediterranean, the crisis returned to being a statistic. Example: Russia-Ukraine war from 2022 to present. Statistics: tens of thousands dead, but Western media often focuses on battlefield numbers rather than individual stories. Tragedy versus statistic. The bombing of Mariupol's maternity hospital, 2022, or the execution of civilians in Bucha personalized the war, while daily artillery deaths in Donbass rarely make headlines. Example: Yemen war from 2015 to present. Statistics: 377,000 plus dead. UN 2021, including 10,000 plus children, but often ignored as a forgotten war. Tragedy versus statistic. The 2018 bombing of a school bus in Sada, killing 40 children, briefly drew attention, but the war remains largely invisible in global discourse. 2. The COVID-19 pandemic, death as data. Statistics: 7 million plus official deaths, World Health Organization 2023. But many countries, e.g. China, North Korea, suppressed real numbers, turning fatalities into abstract figures. Tragedy versus statistic. Early coverage focused on individual stories, Dr. Li Wenliang, the whistleblower doctor in Wuhan. But as deaths surged, they became daily tallies, desensitizing the public. Policy decisions. Governments justified lockdowns, triage protocols, and herd immunity strategies by treating lives as expendable percentages. 3. Migrant and border crises, when lives become numbers. Example: US-Mexico border. Statistics: thousands of migrant deaths, 800 plus in 2022 alone, often reduced to political talking points. Tragedy versus statistic. The photo of Oscar and Valeria, Salvadoran father and daughter drowned in the Rio Grande, 2019, shocked the world, but did little to change policies. Example: EU migration crisis. Statistics: 27,000 plus dead, missing in Mediterranean since 2014. Tragedy versus statistic. The 2015 photo of Alan Kurdi, mentioned earlier, briefly softened European policies, but pushbacks and drownings continue. 4. Climate change disasters, the slow-motion statistic. Statistics: climate-related deaths, e.g. Pakistan floods. 2022, 1,700 plus dead, 33 million affected, are often reported as natural disasters, obscuring political failures. Tragedy versus statistic. The 2021 Pacific Northwest heatwave killed 1,000 plus, but media framed it as a record-breaking anomaly rather than a preventable crisis. 5th. Police violence and social movements. Example: Black Lives Matter, 2020 to present. Statistics: 1,000 plus killed by US police annually, disproportionately Black Americans. Tragedy versus statistic. The murder of George Floyd, 2020, ignited global protests because his death was seen, while countless others remained nameless in datasets. Example: Iran's Masa Amini protests, 2022. Statistics: 500 plus protesters killed, but global attention faded. Tragedy versus statistic. Amini's death became a symbol, but mass arrests and executions continue unreported. Why this matters politically. Media and public policy. Governments and corporations rely on desensitization to avoid accountability, such as arms sales to war zones, fossil fuel lobbying. Activism's role. Movements succeed when they personalize suffering. For example, Greta Thunberg's "How dare you" speech, Parkland shooting survivors. Social media's double edge. It amplifies individual tragedies, for example, Uvalde school shooting videos, but also drowns them in noise. Conclusion: fighting the statistic mentality. The last decade proves the quote's grim relevance. Power systems depersonalize death to maintain control, while resistance movements fight to rehumanize the victims. The lesson? Demand storytelling over statistics in journalism. Reject fatalism. For example, war is inevitable. Pandemics are unstoppable. Hold leaders accountable for every life, not just percentages. That is all in this video. Thanks for watching.